Hey, yo, what's good, fam? This is Craig Waleed. On this episode of Prison to Promise, we flip the script, you heard? Usually, I'm the one asking the questions, but today, I'm on the hot seat. I had the honor of being interviewed by Khenya Robinson. She's a sharp Duke University student, double majoring in public policy and sociology. Me and Khenya chopped it up about the carceral system, from that first stop at jail and bail to life behind the wall to the long, winding road of reentry and rebuilding a life from scratch. Yeah, we drifted off track a couple times too, because that's what happens when the conversation is real. It don't always stay inside the lines, you heard? But that's the beauty of it, when you have two minds, two perspectives, and one honest dialogue about cages, consequences, and the courage to change. Yo, I'm Craig Waleed, and right now, you're tuned into the Prison to Promise podcast, where we turn pain into perspective and perspective into power. Now let's get into it.
Hello.
Hey, good morning.
Thank you so much for your willingness to come speak to me today.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Tell me
Um,
a little bit about what you're doing.
yeah, so a little bit about what I'm doing. Basically, in our public policy class, we have a final project that we have to do, and it could
Mhm.
be over whatever policy issue we're passionate about. And so I chose to do the 15-minute documentary style project. And all semester long, I've been looking into the issue of bail and how it basically is a system of criminalizing poverty and how someone who is unable or you could commit the same crime, but if you don't have the money, you are forced to stay in the detention facility. And so just the effects of that and the broad theme of how the incarceration system dehumanizes individuals and takes away an individual's human dignity to where the what determines their freedom is their financial status. And so discussing those and grappling with those themes has been what I've been doing all semester. And today, I just wanted to talk to you about, your personal experiences. We'll touch on bail a little bit, and just wanting to like hear from you and what you've experienced from our incarceration system. And then what I'll do is I'm creating a video, and I'll have, if it's okay with you, little snippets of our conversation in the video.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so but that's it. I'm first I want to say thank you for just your willingness to talk to me, but also seeing your face multiple times with Duke Justice Project as a member, like hearing your story and whatnot, that has helped me so much with deepening my passion for this and wanting to create
Wow.
change. So yeah.
Wow, that's humbling to know, but thank you so very much. And I'll have to tell you, I'll take you back to like when I was in a cell.
Yes.
Um, and I remember saying to myself, um, I have to find a way to use this experience to help other people.
Mhm.
I was still in my early 20s, like maybe late 20s, because I got out, I was like 29, but I remember thinking just that. And to hear you say that, and I've heard other people say that, but every time I hear it, it touches me really at a really deep place, a real personal place. So I appreciate hearing that from you. And thank you for asking me to be here. Um, and we could just jump right in unless there's anything else you want to cover.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay. So I just wanted to first start about your initial experience. Um, and when you were arrested, what was going through your head at that time? If you did like have a bail experience, I would love to hear more about that. And
Mhm.
just discussing like the hardest thing you lost when you were detained and that transition.
Hmm. Okay, so you asked about what was going through my mind during arrest,
Yes.
um, if I had bail or not,
Hmm.
and what are some of the hardest losses.
Yes, when you were detained. Before,
Oh,
how was your life changed before even reaching a courtroom and they determined your innocence versus guilt?
mm, yeah. So yeah, I think I recall like I was 19 years old when I got arrested. I was still living with my mom. We lived in a house, a suburban home, just me and my mom. My mom worked at Xerox. She made plenty of money, but not a whole lot. But we were in a situation where we never really needed or wanted anything. But I was a high school graduate. I graduated in 1988, summer 89. I was arrested at my mother's house after coming home from work. I worked as a construction laborer. We laid asphalt and roads and concrete and parking lots and all that kind of stuff, driveways. But I remember coming home in my car, driving up the street to my house and seeing the police sitting at the dead end. It was a detective car sitting at the dead end facing me. And so I just thought, that must be them coming to get me. Because I knew I had hurt someone and I knew the police were going to come get me sooner or later. And sure enough, I was about to take off my shirt and pants and get in the shower. I had already taken off my shoes, and there's a knock at the door. Um, they said police. My stomach dropped. I was like, oh shit, should I run? But I knew I couldn't run.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be worth it. So I opened the door. They came in. They arrested me. Um, walked me out. And I just remember thinking, okay, here we go. We're gonna see. I'm probably about to go away for a long time.
Hmm.
And they put me in the car and took me downtown. I stood in a line up, all this other stuff. I got picked out and I knew I was guilty. So I'm like, yeah, I did it, or something like that. I can't remember, but I knew I was guilty. But long story short, I got put in the bullpen. Um, I got the bullpen is just like the general area where people are placed when they're first coming into the jail after they're searched and so on and so forth before they're processed. And then I got eventually put like a couple days later into general population. Maybe after 3 weeks, I got bailed out.
Hmm.
My mother owned her house, our house, and so she put her house up. I'm not sure what else she did, but thinking of, my whole experience and how it impacted my mother, I always think about Tupac said when him in one of his songs when he said, Mama nearly gave her life to raise me right, and so that was the bail arrest experience. And I think, as far as loss, um, I didn't realize what I really had. Because as I mentioned, we lived in a suburban home. It was just me and my mom growing up. Um, but our refrigerator was full. I always had, transportation. At this point, I own my own car. So I think just the luxuries of life are one of the things that I lost. And I say that as I began to talk with men and other young people who were locked up when I was. And I realized that many of them had come from backgrounds of depravity, destitution, marginalization. And in some regards, I was part of the marginalized community because I was a young Black guy, but I
Hmm.
lived in the suburbs and, we had a different economic um, um, base and we lived in a different zip code. But so, some of these things still overlapped. But I realized some of the luxuries of life in comparison to what many of my contemporaries have been experiencing were different. But yet we had some of the same things, some of the same traumas, and so that's some of the things that I think allowed us to be on this in the same arena, so to speak. Um, but I think my life really changed on a number of levels. Um, well, I have to say also, speaking about loss, I lost connection.
Yeah.
I lost connection. I think that's very important for anyone to think about when you talk about loss, because living in jail, especially prison, because prison is long term, whereas jail is not so much. But living in carceral spaces is a social death,
Mm.
so you lose a lot of social capital, a lot of relationships. And sometimes when you come back, those relationships are not the same. And sometimes they're gone forever, so, um, my biggest loss, as I talk about that, was the loss of my relationship with my daughter. I had a daughter who was a year old when I got arrested. When I came out, she was 8 going on 9.
Mm.
She's an adult now. I still have not been able to have a relationship with her. So that's the biggest loss. All right. But my life changed in many ways. Um, and so throughout my whole experience of being incarcerated, there were different points of metamorphosis during my experience, from going through depression, sadness, realizing the loss, the shift of my social connections, as well as coming to a point of acceptance and then curiosity or questioning myself, asking myself, well, how did I get here? And then going through an exploratory stage, really exploring my own personal history and the experiences that culminated into shaping the mind or mentality of a person who would commit a violent offense as I had been convicted of committing. And then trying to figure out the methodologies or approaches to reconstructing my mind so as to manifest a higher reflection of who I am and can be in this life. And so all of these were life-changing events. And then I think part of that was also while incarcerated, beginning college courses, higher education courses, that helped kind of shift my trajectory even more, solidify the shift that I was seeking. So I hope that answers questions. I sound like I'm rambling and
No, this is amazing. I appreciate your vulnerability, and I think that all the things that you have mentioned have been really, really amazing and have definitely answered my question. I love that you continue to speak because more and more comes out of it.
yeah.
So yeah, thank you for that. That definitely answered the question. I
So
was wondering, sorry.
I said dope.
I was wondering, how did like being detained change the way you saw yourself? Like you mentioned, like going through different periods of just like questioning and different curiosities in your mind. But like, how do you think that the system wanted you to see yourself and just like different things in the environment that caused you to question things about your own identity or human dignity and things of that nature?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, sort of like you already reflected back to like these different stages of change or cycles I was going through. I think the same happened with self-perception while incarcerated. There was a point where I was thinking, you're a piece of shit, man. You hurt somebody, you almost killed somebody, you're a piece of shit. But then there came a point where I began to, understand myself better and learn to forgive myself. So I began to see myself as a forgiving person. Um, and then there was this other stage, where I started to think of myself as worthwhile, and then, as intelligent, and then, as um like Bob Marley saying in one of his songs, he said, "Don't be just stock on the shelf." And so at one point, I started to understand this system and saw that, each of us inside the system with these departmental numbers tatted on all our clothes and would precede all of our names were just like stock numbers. And so we were stock on the shelf, and I didn't want to be stock on the shelf, you know. Um, so I began to really understand how this carceral system was tied to chattel slavery, which was tied to, Emancipation Proclamation and the continuation of policing and criminalizing the lives of Black people. Um, and saw how it was more a cash cow. Most Def said in one of his songs, the killing fields need blood to graze the cash cow. It's a number game, but the shit don't add up somehow. And I'm thinking about how, yeah, I'm just stock on the shelf as long as I commit crimes. But then, as I continue to study my situation and my experience, from almost childhood to my time in prison during the 8 years I was in prison, I began to understand that I'm much more than the crime that I committed, much more than the neighborhood I came from or the people or family I came from, but that I'm a manifestation of that which created me. That what I don't know it is, and so I'm not going to try and give it a name, but it's much bigger than I can express. And so that let me know that I'm intellect, I'm emotion, I'm creativity. I'm all of these things. I'm love, I'm powerful, just as you are, just as everyone else is. And so I began to accept that sense of power, authority, and responsibility, and began to walk in that type of light or presence while incarcerated, which really caused a lot of um, heat to come on me from the prison staff who, like, I guess they never said this, but their behavior, if I could articulate it towards me, was like, well, who the fuck do this nigga think he is? Because
Yeah.
I'm in this shitty, muddy swamp, but I'm walking around like I'm God because I felt that confident in myself and I knew where I was going once I got out. And so, you know, you think about, and I mentioned manure or shit, and you think about like manure is used as fertilizer,
Mm.
So though I was in this dark, nasty place, I came to a point of really understanding what led me there, how I got there, and I stayed faithful going through all the stages, not getting stuck in my psycho-emotional stages, and just continued to try to elevate myself, understanding that there is no limit to where each of us can expand. We can expand far beyond our wildest imagination. And I was coming into understanding that. So, yeah, to end that piece, I would say my self-perception was that of being infinite and knowing that the system did not want me to know that. The system just wanted me to continue to be a recidivist, a criminal, a inmate, a nigger, or whatever, but
Mm.
not coming into an understanding of my true authentic self.
Yes. No, that was very powerful. I love your use of songs too. Whenever you describe, it reminds me of my parents because I grew up like hearing these songs and in
Oh,
the car. So Bob
yeah,
Marley, Tupac, all of them.
yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
bringing back memories as you say, but songs are, I'm realizing how important it is for the Black community and Black culture in general. There's so much that's communicated through it. And so
absolutely.
I really love how you reference it. And I also love that you were able to see that you're so much more than what the system defined you as. And I
Yeah,
think that's a beautiful thing. And my goal would be to help other people realize that as well, as I advance with criminal justice reform and things of that nature. So yeah,
yeah,
thank you.
keep pushing, sis. I think the only way we can help people sometimes is through infiltrating systems, speaking the language of the system, dressing the way the system wants us to, but really having a slant towards trying to emancipate our people.
Yes.
You know, there was a brother, he was a judge in New York City. You should get his book. It was called Black Robes, White Justice.
Okay, let me write it down.
His name was Bruce Wright. They
Bruce
called
Wright.
him Cut Him Loose Bruce.
Bruce Wright.
Yep, Wright. Black Robes, White Justice,
Okay.
aka Cut Him Loose Bruce.
Okay. I'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, okay, so in our class, we also talk a lot about this idea of what justice and fairness means to each of us. And so I was wondering for you, kind of what, after going what you've experienced, what is your definition of justice, or what does justice mean to you? Because, it's called the criminal justice system. Um,
yeah.
but is it really doing the justice and fairness that it's meant to accomplish. So yeah, it's kind of a heavy question, I guess, but if you have like an answer, what you think justice.
Yeah. I think it's definitely a heavy question. The first thing that comes to my mind is the late great poet Richard Pryor, who once said in a joke, he said, he had to go to court, and he said, "Man, I looked around and I saw just us." He
Yeah.
said there wasn't no justice system; it was just us. That was the just us system, something to that effect. So, you know, oftentimes I think just that, it's just us primarily, to a large percentage, it's black and brown people who are on the receiving end of the criminal just us system. But I really think it's a criminal injustice system. It's a system that criminalizes, and I think you might have referred to this earlier, but it criminalizes poverty, it criminalizes mental illness, it criminalizes lifestyles that are not part of the mainstream. So I think that there is no real fairness in that system, especially when you see that the bulk of people who are under the auspices or under the jurisdiction or the demands or I don't know whatever, but they're on the receiving end of these systems. Um, they're often the people from these communities I just mentioned, black, brown, LGBTQAI plus, mentally ill, poor. So again, it's an injustice system that criminalizes having being part of these communities, criminalizes the lives of people, just as Jim Crow laws did, just as the Black codes did, just for being who you are, we're going to get you because you're vulnerable. And what do bullies like to do? They pick on vulnerable people, people who are not vulnerable, or punch a bully in their motherfucking face, you know, they don't mess with. I
Yeah.
had to give that emphasis. That's why I use that expletive, but just to give it that emphasis. But so I think that really the system is not just, but I think what is justice is when, and what is fairness is when people are treating each other and treating one another um, in a way that doesn't violate people's relationships, you know, or even if they don't have relationships, just when people don't treat others in ways that violate their humanity, violate their person. I think that that is justice and fairness. So when I think of that and we say, okay, well, someone's committed a crime. So what should happen? So I think that there needs to be a fair resolution to the crime, but we have to do it humanely. And so I think it has to be, I don't have the full answers for that, but I don't think that the way that our current system treats people is humane. And I don't think it's fair because as you opened earlier in your discussion, you talked about when people don't have money, they can't get out of jail, to adequately fight their case,
Mhm.
And so if you could get out of jail, like I got out of prison, I got out of jail on bail. And so I had some money to fight my case. I was looking at 12 and a half to 25, you know, 18 to 35 or something like that, and then they pled it down and they pled it down to the point where I got 4 to 12. So I had to do 2/3 of a 4 to 12, which was 8 years,
Mhm.
you know. And somebody said, well, if you was a white boy, you probably would have got 4 to 8 or 2 to 6,
Mhm.
but you got 4 to 12 and you did 8 on it. So I was looking at a shitload of time still.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
That's my thoughts on fairness and justice, if it makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And I think that that should be the core of it for everybody. But yeah, and you also answered my question of like what would you say to someone who thinks like detention is necessary to prevent crime and ensure public safety? Because I feel like that's a common counter argument that,
Yeah,
to protect the public, being detained is the answer. But
yeah,
as you touched on, like we might not know exactly how, the best way to go about it, but it definitely isn't what we're currently doing with
Right.
detaining individuals and assessing that based on what they're able to pay, and they have to wait trial from a jail cell. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that definitely touched on that as well. So I thank you for that. The last
Yeah.
question to close, to wrap up a little bit, um, is if you could say one thing to the public about people who are incarcerated, what would it be?
Wow, there's like a lot of great things I could say. Um, One of the things I've told people most frequently, though, or with the most frequency, is that I've met the most intelligent and capable people I've ever met in my life while spinning the yard behind the wall or on the cell block or in a day room. And it was from those men that I met behind the wall that I gained the mentorship and inspiration to um, be the person that I am today, almost 28 years to the day since I walked out of New York State's prisons.
Mm,
So,
that's beautiful. That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you so
right
much
on.
for the ways you answered the questions. It was amazing. And I definitely have a lot for my project that I could use. So that's all the
That's
questions I
good.
have. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. Yes, thank you so much.
What makes you want to do this work versus, you know, saving the whales or something?
Um, well, that's a great question. I think for a very long time, I've always wanted to be involved in law, and
Mhm.
um, I've always been interested in like advocacy work, public speaking, things of that nature.
Mhm.
But when I got to college, I took this class about the incarceration system,
Mhm.
and watched documentaries, we read different books like Just Mercy and things of that nature. And so much was revealed to me of how messed up the system is, and
Yeah.
how even tying it, like you mentioned, back to slavery, it was a way to
Mhm.
criminalize those of the Black community. It was the way to take the fathers out of our communities, and that persists for many generations. And it's just another form of slavery. It's another form of keeping us under oppression. And so, honestly, learning more about that and how the system works and more of that being revealed to me, I was like, there's something that needs to be done. I could go into corporate law, make money, but then I'm leaving behind people who are in my
Mhm.
community, those that matter most, who don't have a voice. And so, it feels like it's my purpose to give a voice to those who don't have a voice, and
Yeah.
to be an advocate for those individuals who are often silenced and we don't hear a lot of their stories. And so sharing those stories and hopefully changing policies in that way. But yeah, I feel like every time I learn more stories or hear about people's experiences, it makes me sad that not enough is being done. Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, and it's people. Like we're people. We're
Right.
not animals. We deserve
Right.
that human dignity. We
Mhm.
deserve to be recognized. We deserve to be called intelligent and smart
Mhm.
and beautiful and all those things that oftentimes we aren't called. Instead, we're labeled as a criminal, or, like,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it needs to change. And so it's been in my heart for a long time to help with that.
Well, it's been my pleasure to be on this call with a young warrior such as
Yeah.
yourself, 'cause that's just what you're talking. You're speaking warrior language. The war has changed and it's modern, and this is how we have to fight it.
Yeah.
So keep up the fight. And again, like Bob Marley said, get up, stand up, don't give up the fight.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
This was
Yep.
beautiful.
I appreciate you. Be well.
Okay.
Happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays. Bye bye.
All right, sis. Peace. Hey, y'all. Thanks for hanging out with me for another episode of the Prison to Promise podcast. If you or someone you know would like to share their Prison to Promise story on this platform, please hit me up at drcraigwaleed@gmail.com. I'll spell it for you. That's DrCraigWaleed@gmail.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Peace.